Okay, so this time I'm going to talk about a Falcon controller. So we'll start off with who are these Falcon guys? They run a website called FalconChristmas.com. It's a bit similar to AusChristmasLighting, only they do some board development for the community. They're also responsible for the Falcon player, and some of the Falcon guys have contributed extensively to things like X-Lights. And for a while now they've been doing a variety of controllers. Now, up until this year, the controllers haven't been interesting to me, at least, because they've run their own sort of proprietary DMX-y thing called PixelNet. But now they're about to release their first E131 controller. Now, they're calling it the F16V2. Now, this controller, I've got a test version of it over there, which we can have a look at later. But this controller is much like a Pixelite or a J1sys P12S, or like a SanDevices 680, 682, something like that. Yeah, I haven't seen one. So the reason why this controller was interesting to me is that I've been building this huge strip-based matrix. Wish I knew about panels. And I needed something to drive it. And so this controller can do 16 fused outputs of 680 pixels per output. Now, most of the other controllers can only do 340 pixels per output, or you end up down in only having 2 or 4 outputs that can do 680. So this controller, so this matrix I made would either need 2 Pixelite 16s, 3 P12Ss, or one of these. So this is why I got interested. It also has some DMX outputs, some temperature sensors, and the production version is going to have an LCD display so that you can see what its IP address is and things like that. Now, the optional addition to this controller is an expansion board, which will double the number of outputs from 16 to 32, but it reduces the number of pixels per output down to 340. So like always, it depends what you're trying to do with the show, what elements you've got, how many elements you've got, where they're distributed, as to whether A, this controller is interesting to you, or B, whether you would want an expansion board with this controller. They're also saying they're going to open source the software so the community can drive software improvements in the controller, and it's launching around about now. There's a bulk buy going at the moment in the US, and I'm doing an Australian version of it, and the controller's selling for 175 US dollars, and the expansion for 50 US dollars plus shipping. It looks somewhat like this. The production version has the LCD display over here. We have 2 power inputs on either side. From memory, they're 30 amps per input, and each input controls 8 outputs. So this can drive all sorts of pixels. I believe any type of pixel anyone has ever really used in Christmas lighting, unlike the BeagleBone stuff that I was talking before, that can only really drive the 2811s, 2812s, things like that. And that's what the expansion board looks like. It's basically just a smaller board with just the inputs and outputs. So that was about all I had to say on that one. If anyone is interested, because these boards are being sold at no profit to anyone, more or less, they're only really available out of bulk buys, and both the US and Australian bulk buyers closing at the end of tomorrow, which has been kept open long enough so that we could talk about it really briefly today, in case anyone was interested. But there are lots of options out there. Anyone got any questions?
Yes. You mentioned there'd be an LCD on there. What's that going to display?
Well, it's going to do anything you want it to if you choose to contribute to the software to improve it. I would imagine it's going to do things like let you see the status of the board, help you start and stop test mode, look at the IP address settings, things like that.
Yeah, possibly.
Maybe. This board
The initial code on it will display the DHCP address or the IP address that's been given, etc. That's the initial bit on it. From there, it'll be able they're writing code further to expand that out and be able to allow basic configuration, etc. And then add on the extras around what's the temperature of the board, is it getting traffic, etc.
Yeah, I think we're going to start to see all the new boards come out with LCD displays. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I get a controller out at the beginning of setting up, I don't necessarily remember what IP address I put on it last season, and I'm not very good at putting labels on them to remind myself.
Why?
And so,
Who does that?
well, you know, so you end up factory resetting it just so that you know how to get into it again. Now, some boards like the Advotech Pixelights, the software will auto-discover it more or less no matter what the IP address is, so that's an improvement. But I think the improvement again is to put an LCD on the board, which is what the AlphaPix guys in the US do. I'm just going to say that putting LCDs on boards is a good idea in general, I suspect. Although once you pass the setup and they're in your boxes out in your yard, you're not going to notice them.
How will the LCDs go with the temperature though in some of the boxes?
Good question.
Hasn't been tested.
Hasn't been tested. Bleeding edge. Nothing's been tested.
Buy a couple and test.
No one's run these panels in their displays yet over Christmas.
Yeah, we're all waiting for
The irony is I'm probably not going to run panels this year. I'm going to use this big strip-based matrix I built.
I was going to say, I got this for sales.
Everything's for sale. Everything's always for sale. That's how it works, isn't it?